Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to slow stitch the image of the cross-section of an apple. Now this is a whimsical and fun image. We're going to take advantage of the beautiful shape of the cross-section of an apple. So it can be rounded or heart-shaped, or even like a double bubble shape. Anything that you really want. And it can depend on the variety of the apple, or it can be completely abstract. We'll start by choosing the beautiful color of the skin and then contrast that with the flesh of the apple. So the flesh can be white or off-white, can be patterned or solid. It's totally up to you. For the center, I like to stitch a heart, and then I add a couple of things that resemble seeds. And the seeds match the stem, so there's a lot of consistency throughout this image. Lastly, I take some beautiful green to make the leaves. It's a fun process. At the end of the video, I'll show you a snippet roll that I make with apples and apple slices, and you could tell me if that's something you'd like to learn. I could do a mini series on that as well. So let's get started. So here's the little apple that we're going to be slow stitching. It's just really like a slice of an apple, or a cross section really. You can add as many leaves as you want. You can vary the colors. First thing I like to do is start with whatever size I want. I'm going to do a little charm just like this one. I think I can use those in my work. So I have my background cut out. It's just a little piece of quilted fabric. Any type of fabric would work beautifully. From there, you want to choose the color apple you want to make. There's the classic red. You can do pink. You can do light green. I'm going to do yellow for the next one. I just love that. So I have two colors of yellow here. I think I'm going to use this one. It's just like, it reminds me of a Golden Delicious color. And then I have some fabric for the leaves. I think I'm going to use this fabric because I'm using a solid color for the apple. I think the print would look nice, but you could always use a print for the background. And then you need a color of fabric for the flesh. I like to use just off-white, either muslin, heavyweight muslin, or even this tea-dyed fabric. It gives a really interesting result. So I think I'll just stick with the plain today and make the leaves the only pattern that I use. So to get started, I'm going to start by cutting the apple. So I like to just eyeball it. You can trace on the fabric just as easily, but I'll cut out the maximum size fabric that I'll use, just like that. And then I like to cut a round shape, and it doesn't even have to be perfectly round. As you saw on this apple, it kind of came out on either side. This is kind of a shorter, fatter apple, and that works just well. But really, there's a lot of variation you could make. You could make a top-heavy apple, or not. You can have it even taper down, kind of heart-shaped. And that worked out pretty well. Right on the first try. You can always cut it down a little smaller. To get the filling, I just take my piece here, and you could trace around it. I'm just going to cut around it. Again, I cut it to size so it's a little manageable. Then I fold it in half so I get a symmetrical design. And I fold my apple right on top of it. And now I'll just cut it out to match. Going all the way around that piece. And now, just to make it fit, I'm just going to shave off a little bit. I want just a little bit of the yellow from the apple peeking through. Doesn't have to be perfect. A little bit quirky is nice. And I can just test out to see how it goes. Perfect. I made it a little bit too pointed for a heart shape. And I don't really want that. But if you want that, leave it that way. So now I have my apple and I need my leaves. Because I don't have a lot of fabric here, my leaves will hang off the apple. So I'll cut two pieces. I'll have one leaf longer than the other. So I'll put it right on top of it. And I'll cut my leaves. You can use any type of shape you want. Use these nice long leaves. So I have a very long leaf and a much smaller one. So now I'll trim this one down. And I have my leaves. I think I'll put them on the other side just so they're a little bit different than my sample piece. I want the leaves to go on top of the apple. So right now I'm going to place my apple on my fabric, and with a pin, just going to tack it in place. I'm going to take some of this off-white pearl, which I've already threaded on a needle, and right now I'm just going to stitch around the perimeter of this off-white piece. Start over here and make little just stab stitches. You can do any type of stitch that you'd like. You're trying to hold it down to the piece and frame your shape. So I just like to make these little stitches. And then I've stitched all the way around that heart-shaped piece of the interior of the apple. So I'll remove that pin now since I don't need it any longer. So now I want to stitch a stem. Because my leaves are going to come right by that stem, I'm going to put the leaves down right there, and I'm just going to hold them in place with my thumb. You can use a pin if you want. I'm just going to take 6 strands of brown floss, and I'm going to come up through the center here of that apple, going through the leaves. This will help tack it down. You can see it's going through both leaves. And I'm going to start to bring the stitches down to the center of that apple. And I only want to go partially into the piece. I'm going to re-stitch that down, and now I'm going to come up at a slight angle, not looking to get a perfectly straight line, just a slight angle there. And I'm going to come up through my stitch again, go down through that stitch. You can decide how long you want to make that stem. I like just enough to show it that it's there. So I like to stitch a heart for the core, and then I'll stick my seeds inside there. So I'll take a little pen, leave just a mark here for the heart. I can see if I'm happy with the way that looks. That's good enough for me. And now I want to put my seeds on the center of that heart again. So I'm just going to make a little seeds like this. You can make as many as you want. I like them to echo the lines of the heart there. So I'll just take my brown that I used for the stem, and I'll make the seeds. Just make a straight stitch. You can use a beautiful, elegant pistol stitch or any type of stitch you want, but I think just this little straight stitch is quite nice and very effective for the piece. So now I'm done with my brown thread. I'll knot my thread on the back, and now I want to go in and create the final stitches that make this piece really come to life. So I'll start with my green thread. Now I'm using all 6 strands of floss. You can use as many or as few as you like. And I like my leaves to be mobile. So I'm just going to start on the largest leaf in the center, and I'm just going to make some straight lines going down for the vine. You can again make this more elaborate if you want. This is not only tacking it down, but giving it a little more character. And then when I have that stitched down, I'll come up to my smaller leaf, and approximately half the distance of that leaf, I'll come and stitch that down. And I'm just trying to stitch a line from the center of the leaf to the edge. And because the stem is here, I think I'll just stop right there. You can continue to stitch down, but sometimes the additional embroidery floss, particularly the 6 strands, can look a little busy. Now the last thing I have to do is take that pearl thread, and I want to stitch around this heart. So I'll start here at the point at the bottom. I'm going to make little tiny stitches all the way around that heart, following that line that I traced, because I like that shape. This ink is a Frixian pen, and so with some heat from an iron, it'll erase. So I have my apple here. I'll stitch on the back to anchor my thread, make a little knot. And now I just have to remove that ink. So now I have my hot iron. I'm just going to press it up against that apple to remove the ink. The ink didn't really appear to show very much because I covered it with stitches. When you remove the ink, you get to really see how clean it looks without it. So that's how I made the yellow apple and the red apple. Now I've been working on a project that I think I'm going to do a series coming up. Please be sure to comment below if you'd like to see this as a series. I made this little snippet, and instead of doing just apples, which you can see the three here, the green, the red, and the yellow, I also threw in some apple slices. And then I did some slow stitching around the piece, and so I have this cute little snippet roll. If you'd like to see the process of making that, I can make that into a 2 or 3 part series. So that's how I create those little slow stitched apple pieces. So that's how I slow stitch a really fun and whimsical apple. I think it's a really cute object, particularly for autumn, but any time of year. It's a bunch of contrasts and pleasing shapes. I love the color combinations, the bright color of the apple flesh, the leaves, and then the little heart in the center of the apple. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider becoming a paid member of my channel, where I give behind-the-scenes footage and bonus material. Thanks for joining me today.